for the meeting. Thank you, before we forget. And yeah, as Cynthia mentioned, please put your questions in the chat. This series is really for you, so are here to answer all your questions. So now we would love to hear from our panel. First on my screen, Ciaran, you want to go first?
Yep, thank you very much, Raja. So yeah, my name is Ciaran Murphy-Royal. I'm an associate professor at the University of Montreal. I'm looking at stress, how it affects synaptic plasticity and behavior.
Nice to have you with us, Ciaran.
Thank you.
Claudio?
Hi, my name is Claudio Perez Leighton. I'm an associate professor at Pontificia Universidad Católica de Chile in the south. And I work in the neuroendocrine control of eating behavior.
Amazing. Next on my screen is Carol.
Hi, everyone. My name is Carol Elias. I am a professor in the Molecular Integrative Physiology Department at the University of Michigan. I am a Brazilian in the US, and I was also an associate professor in the University of São Paulo in Brazil. So I mentored in South America and also in North America. My area of research is neuroendocrinology, focused on metabolism and reproduction.
Thank you, Carol. Rebecca, you're next on my screen.
Hi, I'm Becca Shansky. I'm professor and chair of the psychology department at Northeastern University in Boston. I run a behavioral neuroscience lab that studies sex differences in the neural circuits that mediate learning, memory, and defensive behaviors.
Thank you, Rebecca. Caroline, you're next on my screen.
So, Caroline Ménard, I'm an associate professor at the Department of Psychiatry Neuroscience at the Faculty of Medicine of Université Laval, which is in Quebec City, Canada. And then my lab is at the Cerveau Brain Research Center, and we study stress response, mood disorder like depression, mostly with a neurovascular and neuroimmune angle.
Amazing. Such a diverse and really, really great panel. And we're really happy to have you all on board. Again, for the audience, please feel free to put your questions in the chat. And I think to start the discussion, we would love to hear from each of you how to define successful mentorship, whether in academia or elsewhere. But what would successful mentorship look or sound to you like?
All right, to get things going, I would say that in my experience, both being a student and then mentoring people, it's really about the fit that you have with either your boss. Because I mean, you get like you work in somebody's lab, and that person might or might not become a mentor, right? Your boss doesn't have to be your mentor. That's the first thing. But when that happens, I always see that it's about the fit, like how people work, what's their work ethic, how they like what they find funny. Like if you sort of click in the style of work, if you click in that sense, then that's, to me, in my experience, sort of the minimum necessary for a successful mentorship to develop. That like you feel that you fit in a space, right? I would say that that's, to me, it's number one. So for example, every time that somebody wants to work with me and we have sort of like the first couple conversations, I say, if you really like what I do, but you don't like me, find somewhere else, because then it's just going to be really difficult for you to take instruction from somebody that you don't like, and it's just going to be a mess. So that's sort of like a starting point.
Absolutely agree. Chemistry is very important, even with a mentor-mentee relationship. Anyone else has something to share?
I'd like to share my experience. I think successful mentorship depends a lot on this interaction, but also the mentor has to understand that everyone is different and the communication is different, and the expectations need to be very clear since the beginning. So if the mentor is one person, but we receive students and fellows. They are very, very different, and so it needs to be very clear how the communication will be. Are you going to meet every week? And we have also, I think for me, one good mentorship is when I have also personal, not totally intimate, but like some personal, like, are you okay? Is something going wrong in your life that you're not doing well? Or is that something that I can help? Or are you, when you're in a different country, this is a very important thing, that the students come and feel comfortable because they are foreigners in a different country. So I think this relationship is very complicated, but it could be very pleasant for both of them. And this is my comments.
Yep. I guess if I can just add on to that, I guess people are different, right? And also the goals of people are very different. So I think successful mentorship then comes down to figuring out the goals of, let's say, as an associate professor now, I've had a few students and seeing all the different paths they can take. I think it's realizing how, you can help people realize different goals, right? So that's also a key important part of successful mentoring, in my opinion.
If I can add
Fantastic.
one more
Yeah, thank
thing,
you.
I feel like it's important as a mentor to diversify the network as well. It's easy to stay within academia because this is where we grew up kind of and we're comfortable with, but to be able to expand to industry, government job, or other kind of environment, I think it's very important for the trainee because it can open more door for them. Yeah.
That's a really good point. So sorry, just to mention, I learned that the chat is disabled, so please use the Q&A. You are going to be able to ask questions on the Q&A. Sorry about the chat, but we are still going to be able to receive your questions on the Q&A. Fantastic. Anyone else have something to add? But these were all amazing input. Thank you all so much.
I one more thing regarding to what Ciaran said in terms of the diversity of people. Something that an advice that somebody when I was getting started, just gave me is that people are not mini yous. That's sort of like the phrasing that she used. So, because I mean, you're tend to think that people are gonna like work the way that you work, and to an extent, that sort of happens. Like everybody in my lab sort of has the same kind of work ethic, same type of humor, but they're all very different. As Carol was saying, they all have different lives outside of this going on. And so that as a mentor, I feel that as a scientist, it took me like a few years to actually like understand that that means that your mentor is supposed to know you a little bit, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And to like Carol said, like that doesn't mean that I'm gonna know everything that's going on in your life, but there has to be a certain level of partnership. I don't know,
Yeah.
that allows you to sense like how people are going. Like usually that's very like one-sided. Like nobody asks the mentor like how they're doing. Like it's always the mentor to the students, right? But I feel that that's necessary. That's part of what also makes a good relationship work or a good
I
mentoring
guess
relationship.
it sounds like building trust, right? It's kind of trust
Yeah,
between the
kind
two
of,
people.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's a great
Um,
point because sometimes some people say, oh, do I keep it professional with my trainees or do I keep like this more kind of a friendship, fluid relationship? So I think this is a good point, but it also depends on personality. So Rebecca, please go ahead.
Oh, no, it's okay. I was also just going to add, I think that being a good mentor is also using your own social capital to help create opportunities for your trainees, whether that's like passing on invitations that you've gotten and saying, you know what, like it's this person's work that you are interested in. Like my postdoc's going to give the talk, my grad student's going to, present a poster or talk to the press or, like all of these kinds of things, introducing them to people at meetings or even just fostering, email relationships, but it's really, it's not just about what they learn from you in the lab and the skills, but about helping them integrate into the, world that they want to be in, and gain some footholds, not just within your little like lab bubble, but really beyond.
Okay, perfect. Very nice discussion. So just linking in this question, I have another question that it's focused on balancing the mentorship with the PI responsibilities. So how do you balance the effective mentorship with the campaign responsibilities to be a PI. So
How do you balance?
I mean, if this is just a question about time management, like we have, I mean, being a PI is really like having 10 jobs, especially if you're somewhere where you also have to teach. But, you know, mentoring your trainees is one of, if not the most important thing you can do, you know, in a way to ensure, you know, your own success, right? So it should be, I think, at the forefront of, you know, of your time allocations. I just became chair of the department this summer, and that has taken me away from the lab in a lot of different ways, and it's been really hard, but I still am prioritizing, you know, getting up to the lab, seeing everyone, even just a little FaceTime check-in, be like, hey guys, like, what's up? Like, how's everything going? You know, the lab is great, but it's definitely different from when I was in an office next to the lab. So it just takes a little more work, but I mean, this is one of the most important things you can do.
Yeah, in that sense, there is a paper that came out that basically asked like, what was the ideal lab size, right? They were talking about it in terms of productivity, like how many people per grant money, like where do you get the most out of it? And they came out between 7 and 10. But that led me to think also like when you're looking at a lab size from a mentoring perspective, like how many people can I effectively mentor? And that's important. Like, you know, when I was in grad school, somebody said like, don't go to the big name lab because you're going to see them like once, if, right? And so I feel that like when you're developing your own lab, like that's a conscious decision that you have to make. Like how big do I want my lab to be? You know, what's the quality of mentoring that I'm going to give to the people that are going to trust me? Because that's how I see it. Like they're trusting me with their careers. So there's, you know, a responsibility to that. So I felt that in terms with or aligned with what Rebecca was saying, that like just time management, it also comes down to like how big a lab do you want and how much time do you want to spend with each trainee, right? At different levels and different levels of engagement also. I mean, you don't engage as much with a senior graduate student, or the engagement is different than with a, for example, in Chile, we have undergraduates all the time in the lab. And the interaction and the type of mentoring is also different.
Yeah, I think the priority comes down to taking care of your students. As Rebecca said, if they're successful, you're successful. So this is kind of really a priority. But I guess it comes in waves too during the year, right? If you're teaching in exam times, I'll be a lot less available probably during those times, and it really bothers me personally. I'm bothered by it, but it's just, I guess everyone just has to adapt, right, to these kinds of busy schedules in the summer. Whether they're going to conferences, I'm going to conferences, we kind of make it a bit more flexible. And then I think a lot of the mentor-mentee relationship, I guess it's on the person who's looking for mentorship to reach out a lot, right? That's kind of, if you want good mentorship, I think you have to go and search for it, right? It won't land on your plate most of the time.
I can also add that for me, communication is really key. So generally, right away, when I do a state of the lab presentation at the beginning of the year, I already have an idea when I would be really busy with grant submission or with like travel and things like that. So I just laid it off right away to the team. So then we know if we have to do personal individual meeting, we can schedule before or after. And then I communicate also when I'm stressed to the trainee. So then they know like maybe it's going to be more hectic, but they always have priority. So I think the channel of communication needs to be clear. And it's true that at the beginning, sometimes the trainee are scared to ask, like, can I have a meeting if they see you're busy? But I think they should, like, don't be shy to ask if you need a meeting. And then we use Slack because we think Slack is very efficient to reach someone very quickly, but respect also work-life balance. So mute people and try to really respect the personal time as well. I think it's very important, even if there's grand deadlines. Which is hard.
I know. This one is hard to maintain, but I do definitely agree. Sorry, Claudio, you wanted to say something?
I think
Sarah.
of course everybody's different as a mentors as well. I talk to all my students and fellows once a week. I have a time in the week because I also have other leadership positions that I have to take care of, but I have that time. And that's I reserve to talk to the students, to go to the computer to check, to microscope to check data, and so with all my students. And of course, I don't have a big lab. I never like a big lab because of it's my way to mentor, to like the lab. So this is how I separate my time. I just have the time for the graduate program, the time for the Center for Metabolic Phenotyping. I have the time for my lab, and I try to be very responsible with the time that I give to my students because, of course, I'm available, but they know that Tuesday or Friday morning I am doing this thing, so it will take more time for me to. But I try to organize my week, my schedule,
Yeah.
separate things so they know when I am available.
It takes a lot of investment to just put time to everything and all the responsibilities that a PI has.
And this is a good thing for them to see as well. That this is the academic life, right? So if you I love it. And this is how we expect to work. You need to multitask. This is what we do.
Absolutely. So you're not surprised later. Like, great.
Yeah.
And so, related to this topic and questions, like, how do you think you can build an effective mentor-mentee relationship? Like, what is a good, or what are the qualities of a good mentor for you? Or what should mentees look for when choosing a mentor? Like, what are the qualities that make you like a really, really good mentor and make students look for that specific quality when looking for a mentor?
Open communication.
Yeah.
Clear expectations. Be honest. And
I was gonna kind of double down, Carol, in that
Sure,
point
yeah.
of honesty, because I felt that's just crucial. I mean, maybe it's my own history speaking, but like I felt that the younger the student, the more easily that you could, not that you should, no, you can't, but like you could like sell them something, right? Like you'd be like, if you come to my lab, we're gonna publish like 20 papers, and they sort of believe you. But I felt that that's just like you have to be very honest with the expectations and what you can actually do and what it's going to take to get there. And I feel that that's a very important thing to. I almost look at it like like this idea of like what are the red flags in a mentor, and somebody that promised you like everything and they say after a year you're going to be publishing, like that should like ring an alarm, because most likely it's not going to be that way. So I felt that to me is one thing that I always tell people, like, this is how hard it is. Like, for example, like this is what you need to do to get where you want to be. There's no way around it. So if you want to, like, for example, a student says, like, I want to be a PI. I'm like, all right, so you're in undergrad, you're looking at 12 years. And they go like, oh, and I'm like, yeah, sorry. So I felt that point of honesty is crucial.
I guess also, maybe trusting your gut as well when you're building these relationships. Often I kind of, when I'm interviewing people, seeing if I can mentor them or vice versa, right? I think a lot of it's about feeling and personality. I know it sounds very wishy-washy, but I think you really need to have good vibes with the person and kind of think, oh, this is someone that I could talk to about these things or whatever. So a lot of it kind of comes down to maybe subconscious a little bit things and how your initial interactions might go, and then the relationship will build over time, right? I guess a mentor-mentee thing might take a lot of time, especially let's say when you're a postdoc and you're in the lab, let's say, and you're getting more and more senior, you might actually talk to more and more PIs, for example, and build up your own mentorship network with different PIs who just started their labs, for example, and you're looking to start your lab. These are kind of relationships that could be, take a bit of time to develop. And then it's also, I think a lot of this is based on the feeling you get with a person. I think that's quite important from the initial outset.
You can also, I mean, and you should, if the PI already has trainees, you ask them what their experience has been like, and you can get kind of, nitty gritty on some of these things, right? You can say, like, what was the process like when you wrote your last paper, right? So did the PI sit down and go through things with you, or did they just do kind of a cursory overview? Did they write the paper for you, right? Like those kinds of things tell you about the level of investment and the kind of investment the mentor is going to make in their trainees, and that kind of information can be really useful because it is different everywhere. Every mentor has their own way of doing these kind of like milestone events, and again, it's got to work with what you feel like you need. And so as somebody said earlier, like a good mentor recognizes that everyone is different and they can adapt their mentoring style to what that person needs, but that is not always the case. And some people just have, this is the way we do it. And if that's good for you, then great. And if it's not, then you should be in a different lab.
Perfect. So, when you think about the productive mentorship, the next question is what the practice, for example, regular meeting, shared documents, goal settings, have worked best in your mentorship relationship?
One thing that worked very well for me and for us is we have what we call the mentoring plan that we discuss with the students as soon as they join the lab. So, and that this is a requirement from the graduate program here. So we recognize that the mentors, sometimes they are not trained to mentor students. So we just start mentoring like the way we were mentored, or we see what we would like to, how we'd like to be mentored. So there is sometimes, most of the cases, there is not a training to become a mentor. So there is a more investment from the university in this. And what we developed was a document that we discussed with the students. Like, how do you want it to be our meetings? It's every week, every month, it's 1 hour, it's 30 minutes. How we communicate, is it Slack, is it email? So things that will make our relationship better. So, and you have, at the end, we both agree with this. We have our copy of this document, and you have to stick to it. Like, you have to answer my emails 24 hours maximum. So I cannot send you a message and you will reply next week, because I need to have this answer, and I wanted to know what's going on with you, right? So if you're not in the lab, don't respond emails. So these are things that are in this document that make our relationship mentor-mentee better.
Yeah. So we
Yeah,
have
we have
questions.
something.
Sorry.
No, I was about to say
No,
we have
sorry.
something very different in our institution, which we call it a collaborative plan, and then both people have to sign, and then it goes through the director of the program, and then the faculty and everything. And it's really like the work hours, more like vacation and things, but also detail of like experimental plan, what's upcoming for, and the expectation for number of publications, scientific conferences, and then we have to renew it every year. So because things change during a PhD or during a master degree or a postdoc, and so because of that, we can adapt to the goal of the student or the mentee. So I think this is a very useful tool. Sometimes I feel like the people who are slacking on filling it are mostly the PI and the mentor, and because the mentee are really good at it, and then they also get a little like funding because it's related to that. So it's an encouragement to fill these kind of form. And then I saw the question for me. Both questions go together. The challenges we face as mentor, and conflict is one of the big challenge, and we can talk about that for sure.
Actually, that's our next question in the chat. It was like, what are the challenges you face as mentors? And I think this is an amazing question, because we often don't know what are the challenges a mentor is going through in the lab, and those can be many. So, yeah.
I
And
think
how
that,
you deal with them, actually. Please go ahead, Claudio.
no, I was gonna say, like, I think that Caroline is right. Like, those two questions kind of go together. I think that the problem is that nobody trains you for it. That was my experience. Like nobody trained me in how to like manage people. So it's sort of a thing that you had to learn by failing and trying not to fail that hard, so you don't scar somebody. Um, but I think that the most important one is that like it comes to like what the job as a PI is like. As Carol said, as Rebecca said, like you do so many different things that sometimes you go, okay, I got 10 minutes. And I always say this to my friends, like, I'm gonna go get coffee, come with me. And so we get coffee and we got those 10 minutes. And sometimes I've been like, I need to sit down. And then I go, that's all the time that I could give you. And I tried like, and I felt that that's attention that it's always around. The more busy you are as a PI, that's a source when. And then the conflicts between your lab and mentees. I feel that there are two categories there, like at least in my institution. If there's a conflict between graduate students or graduate students postdocs, you can usually work it out. Like you just talk about it, like in lab meeting, like, or if it's a more sensitive issue, you do it in private. With undergraduates, it's a little bit different because there are a lot of rules around like, how to handle conflict between that involves undergrads. Like there's more of a structure. But I feel that like that's really it's not like if you have a good foundation for a mentor-mentee relationship, then the conflict sort of like if you set up like clear expectations, that takes a lot of the potential conflicts away, right? I feel that that's one of this when those are misaligned, and expectations are not just like we're gonna publish a paper this year. Is that when are you gonna have this analysis done? Are you gonna show this in the next lab meeting? Like, have you rewritten your thesis that your committee asked you? Like, those type of day-to-day expectations are also very important.
I think it's also a balance, right? Finding out, I guess that your job as a mentor is to tackle things head on, right? And not avoid conflict or confrontation in a way, but also then realizing maybe what things are going to maybe simmer and just go away, or things that maybe
Yeah.
don't need so much attention and things that need immediate attention, right? So I think that's a kind of a hard part of being a mentor or a leader in a lab situation, right? But you gotta it's difficult, right? Maybe as a postdoc, or when I was a postdoc, I kind of did my own thing, and if something came up, I could just kind of avoid it for a while. Now you can't because it's your lab, right? So that's one of the biggest challenges as a mentor is coming up facing these issues that, as you just said, Claudio, you never faced before, right? You're learning as you go. So and you might make mistakes, right? So I think that's a really big challenge as a mentor.
I would also say one of the other big challenges is I don't know if our trainees appreciate like just how much we care about their success in like a big picture way, and it's a like a burden on us to like an emotional burden, thinking about like, oh, am I doing everything I can to help them succeed? And if they run into an obstacle, and like, was there something I should have done differently that would have like taken that obstacle away or helped them work through it? And if I'm like lying awake at night, I'm mostly just worried about my trainees and that they're happy and feeling like they still love science even when things are like bad in the lab, which they can be. It's like this career is lots of ups and downs, and the ups are great and the downs are like pretty demoralizing. And so feeling like, okay, how am I going to run this lab in a way that keeps everybody motivated to keep going? And hope that you've established, and sort of getting back to what we talked about in the beginning, like the trust between everyone that they're going to share with you when they are struggling. And there's sometimes things that you can see are going on, but you can also tell they don't want to tell you, which at a certain point you don't want to like pry. So I don't know, there's a lot of just like worrying about the trainees in general and feeling like a lot of responsibility for the success and livelihood of all these young people. So
Yeah.
it's a lot.
I can answer follow up that and then also touch the next question, which is in the Q&A. So again, I think for me communication is very important, and I don't hesitate to share some personal stories about sometime I thought I was saying something right and it was wrong, because when you're in a lab with a lot of people coming from different countries, sometimes something can be interpreted in a different way than the way you meant. It get lost in
Oh,
translation, or and then for you it's not big of a deal, but the other person is gonna internalize that and then become frustrated. But then we don't talk to each other, so we don't think it's a big deal. But then it blow, and then eventually it can explode. So I think again, communication is key. And as soon as there's something you feel you're uncomfortable with, it's important to talk about it. I can give an example. So I spent 3 years in New York as a postdoc, and then in French, when we say "you do whatever you want," I thought "you do you" was a good translation of it in American. And then when I was telling that, my friend, after 3 years I spent there, she was like, "Yeah, it's kind of offensive, but we never told you." And I was like, "Thank you. You should have let me know like right at the beginning, and I would never have used it again." But it was just lost in translation, and then I just thought it was appropriate, but it was not. So sometimes just to say that right away, and not during maybe when it's sensitive or emotional, but a bit later, I think it can solve a lot of issues, to try to not hesitate and communicate. And if you're not comfortable to say to the person directly, maybe talk to your PI about it, and then they can say something about at lab meeting, or yeah.
That is a very good point. Yeah.
And we have a very interesting question here in the chat that is how can PIs effectively manage external pressures like tenor timelines, grant cycles, paper pressure, so these don't negatively impact in the training environment? And what the role can trainees play in the foreign's resilient mentoring relationship?
This
I
is a
can
difficult one.
yeah. How
I
much
can
time
I
do we
can
have?
I can start with 2 points. So I would say to be really organized. I think it's a very important point as a PI, but also as trainee, because then you know when you're gonna have this timeline or this cycle, you can adjust to it. I think this is one of the important one. And then also as a trainee, to know your mentor is sometimes under a really stressful situation, like a grant submission or tenure application. I think it's important to be on to understand from the other side as well, that for the trainee, like Becca said, we think a lot about the trainee at night, and then to be sure everybody's okay. But I don't know if they all think about me. I hope so, a little bit, if I'm okay. And I think that sometimes they see it. I go to more concert to try to like release the steam when I'm stressed.
Yeah. So I have a story about that. So a couple of years ago, so one of my trainees, she was an undergrad, really good one, Gabby. Gabby just walks to my office one day and she says, "This is like a Tuesday," and she goes, "I'm gonna take a couple of days off because I just broke up with my boyfriend." And I was like, "Okay, um, is there anything like?" Because she wasn't asking me, she was informing me that she was going to take the days off. So I went, "Okay, is everything on your end good? Like, is there anything urgent?" She said no, and she was working in like a data analysis project, so it wasn't. And so she took the 2 days off, and that prompted a conversation about, this idea of like mental health in the lab and like how do you manage that. And then I was like, there's a very clear asymmetry, like you were saying, Caroline. Like the mentor is supposed to worry about the mentees, but it doesn't really go the other way around. It hasn't been my experience that the mentees are like, "Oh, how this will affect my PI." I don't feel that's a question that is, and so what I'm saying with that, or the point I want to make is that I feel that when you're a mentor, it's a little bit like you have to be willing to sort of give your time, help people, but in reality, if you like, you can't have an expectation beyond like the formal, like, um, and then because in the relationship, there's an asymmetry in the relationship, whether you want it or not, right? You're sort of a boss that wants to be a friend, like a friend, because you're not really a friend. And then you also have to manage all these other challenges, as a PI. And you sort of like, I feel everybody talks to sort of like shields the people. It's like, I worry about the grants, like you do the experiments, or like I worry about this, you write your thesis. And so Um, I feel that it's, so there is an asymmetry in that. The strategies to manage it are very personal. I know people that I work out pretty much every day. I have one out. If I don't, like, I'm gonna go crazy. So that's my strategy, but that works for me, right? And so I feel that there is the reality in terms of how it doesn't affect is that you sort of like tell people, for example, when I have a big one, it's like next week, please, unless it's urgent, I'm not going to be available. If it's urgent, sure, but and I feel that that also helps because then it doesn't explode in their faces when you're like, like really time pressure and they need something and then you have to run and kind of stuff. So I feel that that's a little bit of how I see that part of managing external.
When being a director of the graduate program, we hear a lot of complaints from the students about the mentors, right? This is basically what I do here. I just sit and receive the students and they just complain and complain and complain. And I usually ask, do you know if there's anything going on with your mentor? Do you know if they have a grant, if they lost the grant, if they have some issues at home? So this is something that we need to also create this, I don't know. If they are in your lab, it's because they have they respect your work and they see you as something very important or very great and doing something really cool. They don't see you like a regular person or anyone that can fail, that can be afraid of things. So I think this has to, we need to break this in the students and clarify that, look, I am you in 15 years or 10 years, because we are people and we also have our stress. And so this is important for the students also to understand and the respect at the time that sometimes we need. Mentors also have health issues, also have mental health issues. So, and needs to be sometimes clear for students as well.
Yeah, I think that's really important that you are, transparent and open and help your trainees see you as a human who is working very hard to keep their existence, going. I think a lot of people are just like, oh, like the lab somehow has money, and they don't understand how hard it is to write a grant. They don't understand how unlikely it is that you get a grant. And, in that sense, kind of pulling the curtain back a little bit, sharing hidden curriculum kinds of things with them, helping if the PI is going up for tenure, going up for promotion, understanding how involved and how serious a process that is, I think can go a long way in helping them not only have some compassion for you, but also understanding how the work they do is contributing to, sort of the big picture and everybody winning kind of thing, right? Like when I have a grant deadline or a progress report deadline or something like that, I am like very frequently, kind of pinging my students at the last minute, being like, oh my God, I need like this figure. Can you get me a microscope image of this part of the brain or, whatever as preliminary data. And so they know that like in those, kind of final weeks, they're gonna need to like produce something very fast for me. But it's like all like a group effort at that point. And I think that can make them feel like part of what you're doing, right? So it's not just like I'm writing grants and they're out there pipetting. There's more to it than that. And then obviously share the grants with them, let them see how their contribution kind of played into it.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think sorry,
no, go
Fran.
ahead. Oh,
I
I
think
was
like
about to say, I was about to say the same thing pretty much, but I think fostering a resilient environment means sharing the success, but also sharing the failure, because then everybody, sometimes they see the PI as someone who's really successful, has like big papers and big grants and everything, and they think you always win, which is totally not the case. And I think having them being involved in that part of the job, it's very important because then you learn this is
Yeah.
failure is a big part of our job. I mean, with success rate at 10, 15%, we are said no more than we are said yes. And I think it's really part of the training to learn that. And I think it's also true between trainees. For example, if they apply on scholarship and then one member of your lab get a scholarship, but then three or four apply and they didn't get it, to be able to celebrate the other person getting it, but also the person getting it can share why they thought they got it and help like revising the application for the next time. And so this is building a supportive and fostering a really resilient environment versus we already compete against other people, I don't know, in the province, in the country, whatever, across the world. So if within our own team or research center we're not able to support each other, it's going to be very hard. So I think this is the kind of fostering a resilient environment. It's part of it. It's to celebrate the success of others and then not be scared to ask to help, like if you want to revise your scholarship application, for example. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen your lab, Carly. I think you did a really good job at celebrating all the wins in the lab, right? And your team is really strong for that reason. It's celebrating the little wins is super key, right? For everybody, because I guess everybody gets a win eventually, right? If everyone's trying hard. So it's nice to celebrate those things. But yeah, when coming down to like the relationship building between the people, right? When it comes to grants, as Becca was saying, and you're expecting data for a very specific submission deadline, that is something that we all do, right? Anticipate a deadline and say I need this data by this date or whatever. But on the other hand, then I try to be very, on it when it comes to the students submitting their scholarships and fellowships, right? So they send me something and it's maybe short timeline because they're busy doing lots of different things in the lab, then I'm going to be right on it and give it back in return, right? So I can give rapid feedback and these things. Then it all balances out in the end, right? Like if I'm expecting, quick turnarounds, I kind of give it back when I can as well.
Amazing. I think these are really important points because they touch with everything you've said before. Communication is key, and by communication, it's okay to show when things don't work out and not only show the great, amazing picture, which also goes back to what you all mentioned at the very beginning, that building kind of a friendship relationship with your mentee and mentors, because at the end of the day, you're a little family. You probably spend more time with your PI than you spend with your partner. So it's really interesting and important to spend, like, to have a really healthy relationship together and just like, yeah, be compassionate with them. Mauro actually asked a really good question. What's the mentorship mistake you've learned from? I think this is a really good question.
My mistake, and I still trying to get better every time, is don't have had difficult conversation earlier with a student that we're not doing well. I think this for me is a big mistake because you postpone thinking that things are going to get better, and you postpone and things don't get better. And it needs to be clear, and you need to have a difficult conversation when it's necessary. Avoid postponing.
Very good point.
I'm gonna go with accepting people that I think are not going to fit in the lab because I just needed hands to do experiments. I felt that's a huge mistake.
For me, I would say, and I'm still struggling to find the best way to do it, but it's when you agree to be a co-supervisor or a co-director for thesis, and then everybody has different way of doing it. Some people, it's like 50-50. Some people, they are basically absent. To find like it's hard to find a balance where the mentee is not going to be stuck. Sometimes it worked great, but I would say sometimes the mentee gets stuck between two set of expectation, two set of personality and threats and everything. So that I don't have that many students in co-direction, but I still struggle to find the best recipe that will work for. And again, everybody's different. So I think it's hard to like tailor a co-supervision or co-direction situation.
Yeah, I think also, even within your lab, I guess you have some people who are very productive, their projects are looking great, they're getting the paper ready, everything's going great, and that's where you want to be spending all your time. But there could be other people that might not be progressing and need your time, right? More or at least some of it. And so it's really finding that part. I find that very difficult sometimes when, we're trying to get a paper resubmitted, and that's where I want to put everything, all my waking hours into that. But I kind of trying to find the balance with kind of making sure the whole lab is moving forward as a team. I still don't think I've managed to do that effectively yet.
Well, the other thing, this is just happening to me right now, sort of like an unsolved problem, which is that, I have a PhD student that is really close to finish, and I've been finding it hard to sort of let go and being like, and so the other day I had this, it was very ridiculous. So I basically, I said, let's go get coffee. So I said, you know what? I think that I've taught you everything that I can. Anything that I say from now on is just going to be repeating the point. So I'm going to try to like force myself to take a step back and let you start taking charge of your own career more than me just trying to still, push you into what I think is right. But it sounded like it didn't like it sounded like corny when I said it, it was just like awful. And then he looked at me and he was like, "Did it take you a long?" Yeah, I was like, "Yeah, I practiced this basically." But I felt that that was a challenge because I mean, you're sort of like used to a dynamic in the relationship, and then having to recognize that you have to change it for the benefit of them and T. That was hard to because now I have to trust him more in these final months in terms of reagents and and money and time and everything. So I have to be basically so that's a new challenge that I find myself with more senior graduate students and as well with postdocs it doesn't happen because the relationship is different from the start. But with graduate students, I definitely feel that shift that you have to make in how they, how you approach the relationship.
Thank you all so much for sharing. All really amazing points. So we have a question in the chat. I would like to ask how you each manage your emails effectively. I am a new PI in Montreal and communicate with my own lab on Slack. After 1 year as a PI, I already find the emails from external colleagues, internal colleagues about the course I am teaching, prospective students, etc. All combined come at a faster rate than I can reply to, spending, let's say, 1 hour per day on emails. I feel bad not replying to, for example, there's prospective lab candidates, which sometimes takes me 2 to 3 weeks. I think this is a common
Can I
challenge
just
to
say,
emails. Yeah.
yeah, can I just say that I mean I'm looking forward to hearing answers on this because I don't have an answer to this one, and
I know.
I'm really struggling with this right now. Right now, it's like it's getting busier and busier over time. I'm in the lab now 5 years, and it hasn't stopped increasing in volume and rate of email. So, I really don't know how to manage this. This is a really big struggle for me right now, I think.
I
Ciaran,
can say what I think I try to do. So I learned from Scott Russo, who learned from Eric Nestler, that generally you reply within 5 minutes or it kind of get lost. And so except if I'm writing grants, for example, then I'm very focused and I close everything. Exception of that, I try to really reply to email as fast as I can. I don't work with my phone, so I only have my screen with my email on one side and then what I'm doing on the other side. And then I would say that I also prioritize. So there is some emails that need like a quick answer. And then after that, there's email that's going to be a bit longer. Those I keep generally for the morning after. If I have too many, I wake up half an hour before. But if it makes you feel better, it's our Christmas party, like the research center today. And then early at the first presentation was from the head of the research center. And when he plugged his laptop, we could see that he had 72,000 unread email in his mailbox. So now I feel good about it.
Yeah, I can just say like it's only going to get worse if you're only a first year. Like it just keeps compiling because as you're in your position longer and longer, you have more established relationships, you join committees, you're starting to work on tenure stuff, so you're going to want to like do more stuff, which of course involves emails. So one like piece of this I can answer. So for people who want to join the lab, my lab website has a link to a Google form. And it's like, if you want to join the lab, fill out the form, don't email us and, don't call us, we'll call you. Like then whenever you have time, you say, oh, I'm going to go review the people who've asked to join the lab. And so that like pulls out that, and then it's not something that's just stuck in the middle of your inbox. It's like in its own place. So that's one little time-saving solution. There are tools out there, either kind of like third-party apps or AI-related things that you can use to sort your email. I don't know off the top of my head remember the names of any of them, but I know people who use them and they are really happy with how it helps you get organized. I am more of just like lean into the chaos kind of person, even as chair. And, I think take some time, comb through emails, be like, oh, that I actually really have to respond to. But for the most part, do what you can. If something important falls through the cracks, which is definitely going to, and you just need to like give yourself some grace on that, the people will email you back. For things that have deadlines, that, put it in your calendar and make sure you get to it when it needs to be. But I think everyone in this world is overwhelmed with email, and I think most people will are going to be okay with having to email you again.
So I was in it doesn't get any better. Like that's just like the sad reality. There's not going to be a point where you're going to have less emails. Sorry, that's just the reality. But the one thing that I was going to say is that I found that the best solution for that is to delegate as much as you can, particularly teaching. Here in my university, when you have I have the course that I teach in the second term of the year has 120 students. So the amount of emails, grows. So for example, what we do is I say, I'm not going to answer emails about the material. Those are going to be in the forum, for example. And so then anything related to questions to the TA. And then basically the TA is somebody I trust, is a grad student in the lab, and I say, if you can't solve something or it's not within this list, then you give it to me. But I feel that that's just the best way of, the best way to like spend less time on emails is to create less emails, really. And so to me, that's been how do I reduce the amount of and the time I spend? For example, the other thing that has helped tremendously in terms of that time is that I enforced with fury in my lab that all the data has to be in our online repository. I do not answer any emails about, for example, when somebody's like, hi, Claudio, this is, the draft for my application for. My answer is no, Dropbox. And then when they say, hi, here's the link to Dropbox, then I engage. Right. So there is not this back and forth on email and so on and so on. So I feel that that's, a couple of strategies that have helped to reduce the volume of emails. And then the other thing that I found is that, it depends, but sometimes I found myself just calling people and saying, and when I feel that this is going to be a long chain of emails, I usually call them and be like, okay, so what's the issue? Or talk to them. And then there's just one email that says, this is what we agreed on. And then I read somebody that somebody trained ChatGPT to answer his emails as the person. So you can always, if you want to fully embrace like the AI, that's a possibility. That person, the article said they trained it to write drafts. So every email was pre-answered. He has just to go send. So
find 100 undergrads in your lab at the end of the summer.
Yeah, that's true.
I would say I agree with that. For me, as soon as a student, even an undergrad, join the lab, I'm like, use Slack. Like if you need a form to be signed or anything, don't send an email. Just send it by Slack, because this way I know everything that's my team related, it's all on the Slack. So this is kind of priority. And then the other thing is if you have someone you trust in your lab, for me, it's my lab manager. She does all the like animal protocol, ethic human committee, everything related to ordering. So everything that's like vendor, whatever, I don't see any of that. So I trust her 100% on that. And I'm not a micromanager, so I don't want to be on CC on everything, and she knows. So she's filtering a lot of those requests. So except if, for example, we need to negotiate something very big and we need to like grant money, then I will be in CC. But other than that, 90% she can manage and I'm not in
Yeah.
CC. So that really helps a lot. It's kind of the filter. Like you say, I think there's some way of going around that can help with the crazy amount of emails. Because yes, I totally +1 on the fact that it's not going to get better.
Very good. So we can move for the next question and now bring more this discussion that everybody, I think, agree that about that everybody is different. So I bring how do you approach mentoring trainees from the diverse backgrounds and or with different needs? How you manage this kind of training?
I can say that for me, I'm very honest about my style of mentorship. So for me, I'm not a micromanager like I mentioned, and then I'm also traveling a lot. So I'm not going to be like available as much as some other colleagues. So this is something I'm very honest about. Also, I expect like us to communicate, and I had students who come from training environment where for them the PI is kind of God and everything they say is the truth. And for me, it's not like that. Like I want you to come back to me, and maybe if I say something crazy or unrealistic, you're willing to let me know, even if it's hard for you. Like there's those kind of thing I'm really honest about, because not all mentorship style fit everyone, and I don't want the trainee to try to, because they like my topic, like really force themselves to change because they want to work on that topic. I think for me, it's more important the person fits, like we were saying at the beginning, in the environment than the interest in the topic. Because if you love Alzheimer's disease, for example, but you're miserable after 4 or 5 years, and you're not gonna like it anymore. So I think it's better to be in an environment that you're comfortable with. So I try to be honest about my style, what I expect, the environment, as soon as the student come, like in the first meeting. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's realizing challenges too. If you got diverse people coming into your lab, right? Like I've had people do internships from South America, from France, and things like this, and being in the University of Montreal, which is a French-speaking university, and that's not my first language. The language is the thing that I'm very aware of too, right? So kind of, I guess your own experiences help a lot, but kind of realizing that people will have different things that are difficult. They might be great, but just can't express themselves extremely well. It might take a bit more time. And so, kind of giving everybody a chance to grow and develop, and giving a kind of a decent amount of flexibility so that people can show you how good they could be. Because if they join a lab, right, we clearly took them on because we think they could be great, right? We're not taking on people that we don't think are going to be excellent. So, I think just people take a bit more time to mature than others, and helping them on the specific things that they're worried about.
Fantastic point. And Mara asks another question that I think is really, really interesting. So, who mentored you, and how has that shaped your own mentoring style? Does the fact or the way you were mentored shape in any way your mentoring style, or it's something like you worked on from scratch and established your own and
Totally,
developed your own style? Hmm?
totally.
Yeah.
Very, for sure, for good and for the bad. There are things that you don't like at all, and then you just try to don't to repeat. But there are things that you just have a great experience with your mentor, and you try to do the same. That's for sure.
Yeah.
It's important.
I think it's important to try teams of different size and then mentor with different set of responsibility as well. So for me, I had like a mentor for my PG that was a really small lab in a smaller, like more teaching oriented institution. And then I moved to like a big lab with 30 people, head of the research center. And then I could learn from both environment, what I like, what I don't like, what I would like to become as a mentor. And also having some people who are maybe more advanced in their career stage, more senior investigator versus early career, the it's different to like start almost a lab with someone versus someone who's established and maybe they can help in some ways, but they're not gonna remember how it is to start your own lab and your own career. So having mentor with different stage and path, I think it's a very important aspect of having different mentor. And I think at the end you take a little bit of everyone and you form your own style, I would say.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, so my mentors in both my PhD and my postdoc were pretty hands off as far as like the actual lab stuff went. Even though my lab and my PhD was small, they had 2 or 3 like full-time staff scientists. And so they were the ones who really kind of directly trained all the grad students on, surgeries, all the behavior testing, like basically all the actual lab stuff. And the PI was not in the lab herself that much. And the same goes for my postdoc, which was also kind of a giant lab. But what I did take from both of those was the kind of social capital generosity that I mentioned at the beginning. All of my mentors gave me so many opportunities to really like feel like, okay, I belong in these spaces. I can go on my own, like be super independent, give talks, meet people, travel, and all of those things I think were some of the most formative things for me in terms of wanting to stay in academia and feel like, okay, yes, like this is my world, I belong here. So I think those kinds of things that might feel a little bit more amorphous or abstract are actually really, really important components of the mentoring experiences that you have.
The one thing I can say is that it definitely like changes because you don't stop having mentors when you're a graduate student. I mean that's like when I became an assistant professor here, a mentor was like a full professor that I knew from before, and she sort of took on that role. And every time I had a question, it's like, how does this work? I will go to her, and so it definitely like you keep growing, you keep having different challenges, and then you keep finding people that mentor you. So that keeps informing how you train people, how and I think that there is definitely a point of like that to me is like what worked for me is not going to work for everybody. And so that's always how I look at the lens of the experiences, right? So how is it, what, because I mean, like, Ciaran said, like if you take on somebody, you want them to be as successful as they can. And so then the question is, how do I help this person to reach his best potential? How do I do that? And then you start grabbing up all the experiences and you said, I had this lab mate that was kind of like this person. Let's just try this, see if it works, right? But you definitely don't stop ever because you're always like progressing and finding, new challenges and people that have had those challenges before. And so you sort of reach out to them and you keep learning, you keep improving. So I don't feel it's a process that is stop after your postdoc. And you say like, this is how I mentor people now.
Yeah, I think good or bad, right? You kind of, if you have good mentors or bad mentors during your training and all these things, you learn a lot by just having even experiences that weren't so great, and then, and then kind of thinking, okay, I don't want to do things this way. I want to do it that way. So I guess having a lot of different experiences is very good. And then yeah, as a PI, then moving on, you're still getting mentored, right? Maybe the people are different. Maybe it's someone a year or two ahead of you down the road, and you can ask them questions and things like this, or advice or something like that. So I think the mentorship is kind of nice when you've had different experience, then you can like fine tune what you want to do. And avoid the bad things that you didn't like. And then, yeah, even still, then we're still getting mentored by people. And I guess it's changing all the time. And people you stay in touch with, people you meet, and these things evolves, right?
Oh, I have another question here. What should academia institutions do to encourage better mentorship structures? And do you think mentorship should be formally evaluated or reward?
Caroline, your document sounded pretty good.
Yeah.
I think it's a very tough question. I because I also the mentorship between the PI, the style, it's going to be very different. But I will say that there's workshop that people can do when you start. I would really highly recommend for new PI to do those workshops as soon as they land, as soon as they start. At Université Laval, we had a lot of workshop and training for like how to manage time with like and then how to schedule the thesis, like organize the thesis, the outline, all these kind of things, but also how to track mentorship and when it goes well and when it doesn't go well. So we have those kind of training, but it becomes really hard when you are more advanced in your career to find time to do those workshops, unfortunately. And so what we do is we try to integrate them in our PI retreat, and then we have someone to come and then to talk about us, about one aspect of mentoring or one aspect of EDI or these kind of things. But it's challenging because time is a problem. So to add these kind of requirement, it's very hard. And to make it mandatory, there's a academic kind of liberties or freedom that it's very hard with all the union. I know for us the union is very strong. That would be a challenge to impose something like evaluating mentoring because at the end every PI become kind of a mini industry kind of with their own style. And one thing I wanted to say with the previous question also is that the mentee should not see the PI as a monolithic block with everybody supporting each other no matter what. This isn't true. Sometimes if there's issues, you can talk to another PI, and then sometimes they can come around and talk to their colleague about maybe a behavior or something they could improve. But yes, sometimes the mentee see the mentor as like all together against the mentee, which is not the case at all. This is something to keep in mind.
Thank you to those of you. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Carol, please.
Just a quick, I was mute. One thing that the students do is that they have the best mentor of the year. So they organize this kind of things. And the other thing that we feel is that when the mentor is not good, the mentee will talk to another one. Don't go to that lab. Don't go to that lab. So it's sometimes the mentor, if he had a bad experience with the students, it's hard to have another students because the students talk like we talk about students as well. It's not a good student. So this is something that it's natural. Naturally, the mentor has to learn if they wanted to have students and if they are not a good mentor. So, and in this case, it's very important that we have the training to become mentors because certainly these mentors that made mistakes, they didn't have this, and they are learning more by themselves.
I think that's a very good point, Carol. Go ahead, Carol.
I was to say that for me, I really encourage my I would say junior and PhD, senior PhD student to become mentor themselves with an undergrad or with a master student because it gives another set of eyes to have someone to mentor someone because sometimes also they ask a really good question, like the undergrad, they ask really good question to the PhD student who's like, oh, I forgot that technical detail, and then they learn also to mentor different style of student. I think it's important. I try to have student mentoring someone, maybe not every year, but at least every other year. So they see also different type of people they will work with because in the real world you work with people with very different background personalities, and then to mentor someone from engineering or someone from medical school, it's completely different, and they can question you on your own project with very different angles. So I think it's a very good experience I really encourage my student to mentor people, even if it's only for like a 4 weeks or 8 weeks or a full semester in the summer. I think it's very important. As mentee, I know projects are important, your own projects are important, but to get those experience, I think, and those transversal skill, I think it's part of the training.
Absolutely. So you get a glimpse of how mentorship works actually and get also advice from your mentor real time. I think it's an amazing approach. Really, really good. So we received a few questions on the Google, so thank you for those of you who submitted them. One of the questions was, what do you think is the best way to balance lab projects among trainees? Each one has a completely independent project or joint project. How do you deal with it during the publishing process?
Oof.
I know it's a very good one. It's a hard one, but it's a very good one. Yeah.
So I'm going to say what has worked for me in my lab. So we do a lot of behavioral neuroscience. So usually the experiments require more than one person to actually be run. Sometimes, and so what I figure out is that I usually have what I call the lead. Every experiment has a lead, right? And that's a person that's responsible for the experiment. And the lead can ask everybody at the lab for help and to organize it and to say like, I need this, I need this. The only real requirement that I have is that when that's going to take more than 10% of the time of somebody, they have to check with me, sort of like an idea, because it happens sometimes, especially with like younger grad students, that they will ask the staff scientist, and then it turns out that staff scientist now is doing, 80% of the experiment when that shouldn't be the case. So that's how I always have one person that is fully responsible for the experiment, usually the more senior person, and that person has to like, build its little team. And I think that has worked for me in our research.
Yeah, I guess currently I kind of have a kind of a similar strategy at the beginning. Everybody had their own individual projects, as many as I could think of, which was great. But then you see which ones develop quite well. And now if I have like, let's say a senior or even a junior PhD student who's doing well, if we recruit a master's student, maybe the master's student will take like an independent part of that project. Let's say they're doing behavior. The master's student might get to do electrophysiology, right? So I kind of try to keep kind of some sense of independence of a project, but having the big picture in mind of a global project where the paper is going to be, stuff like this. So I kind of try to keep it like that. So not having as little overlap as possible while being efficient together, right?
In my lab, we have each grad student and postdoc, they have their own project, but they collaborate. So they have their own project, and if they need to, they have expertise for something that they can help the others, and they will be co-authors. If you work, you are a co-author, but the project is very well defined. This is your project, this is their project.
So we have one more question here in the chat. So how much should a mentor take initiative to help a mentee?
I didn't understand. To help?
It's a little vague. Do you mean like help them do their work or to help them? I mean, our job is to help them. I don't think we should be doing their lab work for them.
Yes.
So
I think it's more career development. I think probably more during transition, I would think.
Right.
Sorry?
Probably it's as a career development help, maybe during transition, how to help them land on a position. If whoever asked the question could give more or could clarify the question, please go ahead. But maybe to help them.
There is a saying in Chile that it translates roughly to like you have to pull your own cart. So the way I see it, my job is not to pull the cart, is tell them in which direction should they go and give them a car that will allow them to get where they need to, right? So whenever I see a trainee or somebody that's struggling, I usually say, okay, what's going on? I know, very seldomly I do stuff in the things in the lab. I still like to, so I still look for the opportunity to do some of the stuff. But usually it's like, what's going on? Why are you not delivering? Like, is it because your workload is being unmanageable? Like, do you need help? Like, you prioritizing but then like you sort of like, I feel that as a mentor, you stop at, I think this is what you should do. Do we agree this is a good solution? Now it's your job to do that. You can't do that for the student. Back in like when I was starting, because I needed to graduate students, at one point a student that was really hard time, like she had a really hard time writing, was like, you know what, that's done. Like I'm gonna write this. And I kind of wrote her thesis. And then when I was done, it was like, you that's something that I shouldn't have done. But I kind of needed like that student to graduate to show progress for my, tenure application process. So, but from that experience, I was like, I don't do that anymore. I'm like, your thesis is your thesis. And I've said to students, I'll write the paper. Like, if you don't get to the point where you can write the paper, that's a you problem. Like, not because I didn't train you, because you couldn't get there. So, but your thesis is your document. Like, I'll read it as many times as necessary, but I'm not going to write a single word on it. So it's about like putting them in the right direction and then maybe give them a little push, but the students need to be able to like gain momentum and develop their own careers, because everybody leaves the lab eventually.
Yeah, and like at the end of the day, this is a job where you need to have the skills for yourself. And the mentor is doing their trainees a disservice if they don't force them, not force, but if they don't get them to a place where they're leaving, being able to write a paper, being able to design experiments, being able to communicate their work with other people. We can't like drag people across the finish line, because then it's just going to be the next like stage's problem. So I think I completely have sympathy for you, Claudia, for, because you did like it, the student needed to graduate, for a lot of different reasons. But I agree that now I am more hands-off. There was one paper, I don't know, like maybe 5 years ago, and I was like, this is the last like research paper that I am writing for this lab. Like everyone else needs to like write their own papers from now on, because as much as I actually really love writing papers, I don't have time to do it anymore. And it's a really, really important skill for them. So I think, our job is to help them be the best scientists they can. And that includes being independently skilled at a lot of the things that this job requires.
The other thing that you need to think, and that this is, I think what was mentioned is very important, but there's another thing that you have to think in your own lab, because if you help the student do things that they don't know how to do very well, they're going to leave your lab and they're going to say, I work in the Elias lab. So if they are looking for a postdoc in another lab, and they come and say, I work in the Elias lab, the new PI should think that, oh, this is a good lab. So this is well-trained, the students come from that lab. So you have also to think about your own career, not only in the students, because it's also from your lab. So you are signing the same paper, you are signing the same thesis. So this is, and the person that work with you will bring also the name of your lab sign. So don't do things that you think that your student cannot do themselves, because if they are asked to do, they are not going to be able to later on. This is my
Fantastic point.
suggestion.
It's also your image and your lab's name that is in there. So I agree.
Yeah, and they're not fair with the others that are good, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Couldn't agree more. We will start wrapping up. I think the really good questions we've had is, what is one small action that mentors can take tomorrow to improve their mentoring practice from your own point of view? Or in other words, if you could give yourself one piece of advice, or if you could give one piece of advice to your younger self as a mentee, what would it be? So it goes in the same direction. Love these challenging questions. They're very good, actually.
I would say find the things that you're really bad at, and just work on them. Like whatever your weaknesses are, you have to find those and just be relentless. Because if you do that, you come from like a basic academia, you're gonna find out that like probably managing time, managing people, talking to people, solving conflicts are gonna be high up on the list. And so the sooner you recognize that those are like weaknesses that just come from like the biases in our training, the best you know, you're probably going to be able in the right direction to try to like fix them, you know, and hopefully they won't explode in your face when you know, like you really need them and you don't have them. So I would say that find what your weaknesses.
Yeah, I guess tackling things head on, right? Kind of as you're saying, finding your weaknesses. So those things, maybe I'll try and take Caroline's approach of sending the email 5 minutes after it gets in my inbox, right? So like this is a weakness of mine, this kind of time management thing, right? So I think that is a good way to put it. But yeah, tackling things head on is really a good way to go about being a mentor.
I would have something that's good for both mentor and mentee. It's to learn to say no and learn early on. For me, I gave myself a time window of the first 2 years, and then I opened in 2018. So then COVID hit, so I reset in 2021. But I think to learn to say no, even if you're a mentee and you know there's all these like different committee you can be involved, social events, things like that, and sometimes you don't realize it, but it eats a lot of your time, and then you become tired, and then it's gonna reflect on the rest of your work. And then you need like suddenly a vacation and you're burned out. So I think to learn to say no and to really prioritize, it's a very important skill to learn. And then don't forget to take vacation. Sometimes to take a 2 week off, even if you're overload, it can make a huge difference. When you come back, you're way more efficient. Your head is more clear versus if you're tired and you just try to push through. So I think learn to say no, and then don't forget vacation, even a few days, not even 2 weeks.
I totally agree. I cannot say anything. This is, for me, is the best.
Yeah. And I would just add to just really communicate like where your head is at with your like in both directions. I think for either mentees or mentors, you know, we've touched on this before, but telling people when you're confused, asking questions, you know, as a mentor, tell your mentees about like be, you know, kind of, you know, kind but honest about their performances, check in regularly. I think being not afraid to admit when you're struggling, again, in both directions, can go a long way for building trust and for being able to solve problems.
Very good discussion. So we have time for one more question. So that will be our closing question. So what is one practical takeaway and you want the attenders, mentors, and trainees to remember from today's discussion?
Remember to take a vacation. I think that was the best way.
Yeah, I feel like the last answers kind of covered that.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
I will also add that we're scientists, but we're also human beings. So everybody goes through, life is a roller coaster. So everybody goes through ups and downs. And I think this is something to keep in mind. It comes back when sometimes someone is distracted and you don't know exactly what's going on sometime in their personal life. And it can both be from mentor or from mentee. So I think one big advice is also when you talk to someone, make sure they listen 100%. It's sometimes easy to be distracted or think about something else. And especially if it's important, like from both mentor and mentee, be there like 100% and listen. I think it's easy to be distracted with everything going on, and then keep the phone away. It's a huge distraction.
I definitely agree with this one about the phone. Well, thank you all so much. This was a fantastic session. Honestly, thank you for sharing your experiences and your advice with the trainees. We really appreciate your time. We appreciate you being here. And thank you for the attendees for coming. This was really, really, oh, I don't know. I thought we have a question, but no. So thank you all so much. Please, if you're not a PENS member, become a PENS member. And hopefully we will see you next year with another topic. Thank you all so much. And have a great
Thank you.
rest of
It
your
was
day.
great.
And
Yeah.
happy
Bye.
holidays.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.